Hey, this is Pastor Bunjee Garrett, and I want to take this opportunity to present you with another word of encouragement. Well, without debate, we're continuing to watch the moral fabric of our country quickly unraveling. And to prove my point, let's consider a handful of headlines that help us to see how quickly our country is coming apart at the seams. For example, CVS is actually in the process of closing a total of 900 stores by 2024. Oh, and Rite Aid is set to close around 500 stores nationwide as it negotiates a plan to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And Target is planning to shutter 9 stores across 4 states on October the 21st. And the reason why? Well, it's because of the theft and the threats to safety that are occurring at these stores. That's right. More and more retailers are leaving urban locations because of the crimes that continue to increase across our country. And the most recent example of how bad things are getting, well, it was witnessed last Tuesday night as groups of thieves, apparently working together, they smashed their way into stores there in Center City, Philadelphia. And just to be clear, they weren't stealing food for their families. No, instead, they were stealing shoes from Foot Locker, iPhones and iPads from Apple, and yoga pants from Lululemon. Now, with all of this in mind, you should know that retail theft continues to increase year over year here in America. And as a result, major retail chains all over our nation are shutting down their stores, and mainly in the areas of a city where rampant theft is affecting their profits. And just to be clear, a representative from Target explained it in this way, and I quote, "We cannot continue operating these stores because theft and organized retail crime are threatening the safety of our team and guests and contributing to unsustainable business performance." That's right, retailers like Target are getting ready to shutter many stores in many different places, and specifically in the places where retail theft is causing unsustainable business performance. Simply put, Target is done being a target of criminals. At the same time, carjackings have more than doubled in the last, in at least 8 major cities. And this crime of carjacking has actually tripled in Memphis and Chicago over this year. And just to be clear, a carjacking is defined as a theft or attempted theft of a motor vehicle by force or threat. So yeah, we're now watching an increasing number of violent criminals forcing drivers out of their cars and then stealing the vehicle. Oh, and let's not forget about the fentanyl crisis that started back in 2013. And while it's true that this opioid epidemic actually began 10 years ago, well, the number of fentanyl overdose deaths here in our country, well, it began to spike once again shortly after, Biden's border policies provided the cartels with easy access to American soil. As a matter of fact, the number of people who died from a fentanyl overdose in the U.S. more than doubled in 2022, when compared to the data from 2019. And if you're wondering what changed, well, just look at Biden's border policies, which have created the conditions that allow the cartels to easily smuggle these opioids into our country. And as a result, more than 70,000 people died from a fentanyl overdose in 2022. Well, many more are living on the streets now in the ever-increasing number of the homeless camps that we see. And it's there where we find fentanyl addicts roaming around like zombies. This is just completely tragic. Not only that, but we've also witnessed nearly 6 million illegal crossings of our southern border since Joe Biden was installed into the White House. And almost 2 million illegal immigrants have evaded apprehension at our southern border, and this is according to Border Patrol sources. But listen, it's so overwhelming there at the border, and it's causing such a problem throughout our nation that Democrat leaders in many sanctuary cities are now finally asking President Biden to close the borders. Enough is enough. One reason for this is because they don't have the resources to care for the impoverished citizens in their city while simultaneously caring for the illegal immigrants that are now looking for handouts in many of these sanctuary cities. Meanwhile, our senators are quibbling about the proper dress code for the Senate floor, and our GOP presidential contenders just debated about the cost of curtains in the residence of the UN ambassador. And our nation is falling apart at the seams, and yet our leaders are arguing about dress codes and curtains. These people are clearly fiddling while Rome is burning. At the same time, our corrupt uniparty continues to send more and more money to Ukraine, while Bidenomics continues to destroy the middle class here in our country. I like the way that Michael Snyder summed it up when he declared this, and I quote him, "Thanks to our rapidly rising cost of living, the middle class is becoming the impoverished class, and the poor are increasingly being pushed out into the streets." That's right. Bidenomics is destroying the middle class here in America. And as he continues to print more money for Ukraine, well, the purchasing power of the American dollar continues to collapse as the cost of living continues to rise. Now, with all of this in mind, I have no doubt that many of us are completely stressed out and worried about the situation at hand. And yet I can't help but to remember that, this is exactly what Paul prophesied about in his letter, the second letter to Timothy here. And it's actually 2 Timothy chapter 3. There he declares this. He says, "Know this, that in the last days, perilous times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying its power, and from such people turn away." Without debate, this is an excellent description of the days in which we are now living. And whether we're talking about criminals like looters and carjackers, or we're talking about criminals like the Uniparty that's laundering money there in Ukraine, both groups have become lovers of themselves and lovers of money rather than lovers of God. That being the case, I just want to take this moment to encourage you that this is actually a reason to rejoice, especially knowing that these are signs of the end times. As a matter of fact, it's in Matthew chapter 24. There Jesus describes the last days in this way, and he declares this: "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold." That's right, the last days will not only be a time of pandemics and famines, earthquakes and wars, but the last days will also be a time when lawlessness will abound. And as a result, the love of many will grow cold. Listen, this is exactly what we're witnessing as more and more people begin to see lawlessness as a means for acquiring the worldly wealth that they want. And this is the evidence, really, that they've become lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Without debate, it's a sad state of affairs happening here in America. And yet I'll remind you that these are just the beginnings of sorrow. And not only that, but listen, these are the signs of the times, which should act as indicator lights for us to help us to remember that the day of our redemption is drawing near. Therefore, we don't need to worry about these things. We don't need to stress about these things. Instead, we ought to be walking by faith with Jesus Christ as we continue to look forward to the finish line of faith. And with this as the focus, let's look for the power of the Holy Spirit to enable us so that we can continue to fight the good fight of faith, and all for the glory of God.